che mo fa sera.
Hello and welcome to Talking in Stations. This weekend we have a special show for you themed on Memorial Day, and our host Matterall is away. So today I'm your guest host, Carneros, and with me I have Dirk McGurk as co-host. Thank you for coming, Dirk. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
This weekend we have some special guests. We invited two groups specifically because it's Memorial Day weekend. One is called Best of Us, and the other is called Broadcast for Reps. Best of Us provides support to veterans and active duty military that play EVE, and it doesn't matter what country or around the world they are. And Broadcast for Reps provides support for those suffering from depression or just need someone to talk to. So we're looking forward to talking to these guys this weekend. We also have special guest Garst Tyrell from Triumvirate, who has some has a great story to tell us about last weekend's XIX evacuation and stuff happening on that side of the map. Also, we have a guest from Bombers Bar, Nova Valentis, who's going to come talk to us about that longtime whale hunting group. I don't know if you've ever flown with them. I have. It's been a few years, but it's a lot of fun. And we'll see what's going on in EVE Online with Bombers Bar. So before we get going, let's go around the room and have each of the guests introduce themselves in their own words so you can hear their voice and associate it with them for our podcast listeners. Jay McLean.
Hey everybody, I'm Jay McLean, just a dude who plays EVE and started Best of Us, a community for military veterans in EVE Online. Past that, just a guy.
Nice. Marrowbone.
Hey, I am Marrowbone. I play with Triumvirate in-game, but I have currently been promoted and I'm now the CEO of Broadcast for Reps.
Congratulations, Matt. Nova.
Hey, I'm Nova Valentis. I'm an FC in Bombers Bar. And
nice.
You can identify me by the German accent.
Nice. Garst.
Hi, everybody. I'm Garst Tyrell. I'm the leader of Tri Alliance and also the head FC.
Nice. And Dirk, I think people know your voice, but introduce yourself.
Hey, yeah, it's Dirk McGurk from, typically host of the Open Com show, as well as a member of Crusaders in Tactical Narcotics Team, a sub-entity of the Imperium.
Amen. Let's hear it for sub-entities of the Imperium. Okay. Let's start with the Memorial Day special part and talk to Best of Us and Broadcast for Reps. Why don't we go ladies first and start with Broadcast for Reps? Tell us what you do and how you approach it. Tell us your message. And please assume some folks have never heard of you and haven't been playing EVE recently or just started.
Okay, well, Broadcast for Reps was an organization originally started by Coffee Rocks and was funded through some streamers and things like that. When it first started, it was kind of hooked up, and there was a lot of people from Brave involved because it was started to kind of honor and remember John Bellicose to start. We've obviously since moved on from that. I wasn't involved back then. I'm kind of newer to the program. But what we do is we are here both in-game with an in-game channel, which is Broadcast for Reps. And then we have our Discord server. And what we do there is basically you have a bunch of other EVE players and volunteers. You have my moderators and admin there. And they're basically there to help people who are having a hard time, either with their real lives or something's happened in game to them that has caused them to be upset and kind of need to reach out for a little bit of help and basically peer support, which is what we specialize in. It's kind of gamer to gamer. Like, we understand where you're coming from. We play the same things you do, and we hope that we can help you and talk to you. And then, if necessary, we go as far as to kind of refer people to get outside help or help them make outside contacts so that they can get the help that they need, so that, some of the more serious cases don't end up in, a bad way. Eve kind of has a reputation for being a little bit vicious on the player side, player to player, and Broadcast for Reps is there to remind players that it doesn't need to be that way. And really, at the end of the day, we're just all people and we're here to help each other.
Amen. Nice.
What happened with, because you said Coffee Rocks founded it. Where has he gone? And how's he doing?
Coffee is doing really well. Basically, I got involved with Broadcast for Reps probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. When I was getting involved, it was kind of at the point where Coffee had been kind of operating everything really solely by himself, and he was kind of getting that burnout thing. So when I came into the picture, just kind of with my background and my experience in mental health and what I was willing to do and what I was offering them, Coffee added me to the board with himself and a few other people. And in the past few months here, he's actually decided, he made me CEO of the in-game channels and stuff. And right now we are actually in the process of transferring the nonprofit to myself as well, because he just kind of needed a little bit of a break like we all do sometimes. And myself and a few other members of Broadcast for Reps, such as Tovanis, have stepped up and, this is an important movement and we don't want it to be shelved just because he needs a break. So he'll still pop in time to time to say hey and check in on us. But he's basically left the day-to-day operations to kind of be restarted by myself and the other current active members.
Now, if we're flying around and we've got a corp mate or a fleet mate that we think should know about Broadcast for Reps, how do we tell them to get in touch with you? What's your public chat channel?
Well, our public chat channel in game is the Broadcast for Reps, spelled exactly like that, broadcast space for and then space reps. Where we have a lot more activity though is probably on our Discord server. And I'd be happy to get you the links and stuff for that so that you can post them up after this or sometime. And, that's where we have the most people and probably do most of our work is from the Discord server, but people are more than welcome to reach us in game too.
Nice.
Now, over the years with Broadcast for Reps, it's kind of had some ups and downs. I mean, you've got people out there that are concerned that there is sort of, a channel of non-professionals helping people with something that would normally be directed towards professionals. And I think sometimes it gets kind of a bad rap from that standpoint. Can you sort of explain what it is that the channel is sort of there for, on sort of the normal day to day, and then how you also recognize the fact that you're not professionals?
I guess probably recently in the past several years is kind of a trend within our country as well. A lot of places in real life have opened up which are basically known as peer support organizations. That is where my background is and why I got involved with Broadcast for Reps, because I kind of have a special knowledge about that. So basically what Spam for Heels is like I said, we're not professionals. We're not, going to be able to necessarily give you the same advice that a psychologist or a psychiatrist or, a nurse or whoever, a therapist is going to give you. But we are there basically to be your peers, like a gamer to gamer, peer to peer thing. And we're there to listen to you, share our experiences with you, let you share your experiences with us, and, try to just kind of feel you out and let you know that you're not playing this game alone, that, we've all been there. We've all had our ups and downs in Eve. We've all had our ups and downs in life, and that you don't need to feel that you're by yourself if you're going through that or if you're having a rough time. Whether it's you've just been kicked from a corporation and you're upset and you want to quit the game, or whether, something's happened in the game that kind of manifested on top of everything that you had going on in real life, and you just need somebody to talk to and hear you out. That's kind of what we're there for.
Now, what is the relationship like these days with the Eve subreddit? When you have, when somebody may appear on there and begin to say something that might be considered a call for help or something along those lines. How is Reddit Eve handling that these days and the relationship with B4R?
It's actually changed kind of since I've taken over B4R. I've talked to them, they've actively talked to me, and basically the way that that's handled now is if they see those kind of posts. Obviously, the last thing that we want is for those people to be trolled by the Eve community, as we all know happens on Reddit. Like every day, it's just a natural thing. It happens on Reddit, happens on the Eve Online Facebook group. It's what happens. So what Reddit has kind of done is that they will see those posts and they will refer those players to come to Spam for Heals and Broadcast for Reps to deal with their problems, because Reddit probably just isn't the best place to do that for some obvious reasons.
Well, I think at one point, if a post like that actually went up, there was almost a delete it, mainly out of fear that it would get trolled, right? But you're saying that basically they are referring it in what I'll call a proper way now.
Yeah, they basically have talked to us, and they do have that let's delete this, but they've also taken the steps to be well, if we're going to take this down, or if we're not going to have this deal with on here, let's give this person the tools to get to people that can actually help them with this so that it doesn't turn into a problem.
Now, maybe at this point it's probably a good time to unless we've got something specific, again for Broadcast for Reps, maybe bring McLean in to kind of talk about Best of Us, because I know that there was a relationship there with Coffee Rocks, back in the day, and we can probably get to a point where there's a bit of overlap between these organizations, So McLean, why don't you hop in here? Tell us a bit about the formation of Best of Us. If you can tell us kind of where the name came from, because I think sometimes there's some misperceptions out there about kind of even the name. So take us back to sort of the formation of it.
Okay. So it started 2014. So I started playing Eve in 2013, shortly after I medically retired from the Army. Which, for anybody who doesn't know, they'll separate you from the Army when you can no longer physically conduct the job that you signed up for. With me, it was because of some shrapnel in my leg and some traumatic brain injury and some PTSD. So going home, I didn't have a social support network, and I had a lot of time to fill up. So I started playing Eve, and then in Eve, I started to play faction warfare, and I ran into a guy who was a Brit, but he had a certain kind of manner about him, and it led me to private chat with him. I was like, "Hey, by any chance were you in the Army?" And so from there, we got to talking about both of our times that we spent in Afghanistan, and that put me in a lot better place, being able to have that kind of connection with somebody who had a like experience with me, because it's very hard to connect with people who, and even inside of all military service, if you haven't gone to a specific place, it really is kind of hard to make that connection, that you can have that shared knowledge about a very specific place and a very specific way that it affects you. So after seeing how much it helped me, because for lack of a better term, I was a hot mess when I got out. So, I was very shut in. I didn't leave my house for 2 years. Things were pretty bad, but things started getting better when I was able to talk with somebody who had a like experience, because I got disconnected from my community that I had in the Army. And for anybody who doesn't know, when you're in the military, the small group connections that you make with people, it sounds kind of cliche, but with the amount of time that you spend with people and the types of things that you go through with these people, the connections are very, very, it's almost intangible to explain it to somebody who hasn't experienced it. But it's as if it's a sort of familial connection, like they are directly like actual family. So in disconnecting from that, it put me in a really bad place. But I was able to kind of get that connection back by talking to another vet who had a similar experience that I had. So after seeing, what an improvement it could be for me, I talked to Pukin and Mean Harry when they were still in Podside podcast. And I said, hey, I want to get this group together because if it can help me, given the stuff that I had gone through, I think it'd be a lot of help for other people, and maybe who aren't dealing with that, like maybe PTSD, but are dealing with that disconnection from a small, tight-knit community group that has a shared experience. So we got the ball rolling on, getting an in-game channel together. I was talking about it on podcasts. Shortly after that, I talked to Dirk and started doing open comms with him to kind of get the word out. And they were really good at kind of projecting that message out there. It was super helpful at the time. And I made the decision that this is kind of critical to leave my house, because I hadn't gone X amount of miles outside of my home for a good long time, to go to an eVegas that year. It just kind of on a whim, on a drop of a hat, I said, okay, I'm going to go out to Vegas, and we're going to see what all of this is about. And I went to Vegas. It was an experience, right? Anybody who's been to an Eve meet, at first there's apprehension if you've never been to one, but once you get there, you get that kind of intimate tie, that connection, that sameness with other people who they play Eve. And as long as you play Eve, it's kind of all right. Like, it doesn't, nothing else really matters at that point when you're face to face with other Eve players. So after, doing all of this, I went to Vegas the following year and did a talk about social support networks in EVE Online, which everybody pretty much participates in. If you're in a player group, you're basically in a peer support network. And it's kind of important for people to realize the connection that people can draw from, the in-game experience. It very much parallels what people can see inside of military service. Obviously, it pales in depth, but at the same time, it's a very real connection that you have with other people. So, that's, I guess, kind of it in a nutshell. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but so right now we're a community. We have a Discord server that's been furnished by the good people over at Discord. We have one of the fancy ones that can hold a lot of people, and they gave us kind of a cool little vanity URL to join. And we're a community now that we talk about stuff inside of specific member channels. We're there to act as peer intervention, but it started out, I focused on the suicide problem, because if people don't know, inside of the military community, we have a very staggering suicide issue within our community. And initially, I really focused on that because I had lost the guy that I had deployed with. He had overdosed trying to deal with his PTSD. So I've since gone away from focusing on the suicide message, because if we keep harping on that suicide message and we keep people thinking that, this is the inevitable end, this is going to be the outcome of you get people into a line of thinking that, okay, well, that's just the inevitable end. But if we don't focus on that, and we focus on making sure that people feel that they belong with an in-group that has their shared experience, we don't have to be so dour about the reality of things, because there's enough shitty things in this world that we don't constantly need to be harping on suicide, because we all know it sucks. And in the military community, it's touched a lot of us. So focusing on and maintaining a more of a positive idea of just having a community where guys are there together, we can do peer intervention if that is necessary, which amongst the military veteran community, peer intervention is probably, let me just say, I'm not a mental health expert. I have dealt with a lot of my own mental health issues surrounding all of this stuff. And I've taken my experience in dealing with that, and I now use that experience to kind of temper the way that I deal with this kind of stuff inside of our community. But like the best thing in the military veteran community is going to be that peer-to-peer intervention, just because we have such a strong connection with one another, given our shared experience. It's really hard to get that from a mental health expert unless that expert has in fact gone and done the same things. So in our particular community, that shared experience almost overrides other forms of connection, at least for the effects of peer-to-peer intervention and dealing with that kind of stuff.
Jay, is there something special about EVE Online that makes it a better environment for active duty and former service members to play? Because you see a lot of them, or you meet a lot of people.
Yeah, the game is pretty lousy with military veterans. And so I've thought about this for a long time, and I probably should have wrote an article a long time about this, but I'm super lazy. But what makes EVE Online in particular really great for military veterans is the fact that it very much mirrors early human evolution. It's a very harsh environment. If you don't team up with somebody else, you're probably not going to get ahead. But the benefits of teaming up with somebody else, working as a tight-knit community to achieve whatever objective or goal that you're trying to do inside of this really open sandbox, that reflects what we see in service, what we see in combat, and what we see in early hominid evolution. So all of that makes it one of the most ideal places for military veterans to kind of find that, hey, if I'm in here and I work really good with this tight-knit group, like we can achieve something. And that's what we get a lot in the military service, because we focus a lot on team building exercises and one person working on their piece of the pie and performing that function to help the benefit the whole.
Actually,
sorry.
Oh, hold on a second. I actually want to go to a question that came up out there in channel, and I think they're actually trying to kind of get an understanding when they ask the question. But they say if people know how depressing the military is, then why join? And my very basic response to that was, it's not so much joining the military, it's actually the leaving. It's actually the coming home and trying to readapt back into non-military society and the loss of what was left behind. Do I have that right?
Yeah. So, and that should really be focused on. So, being part of a team where you are working in an environment where you in reality could die, but you put all of that aside because whatever the team is trying to accomplish as a goal is your priority. And by you participating and doing your best at your job, you're helping to create conditions where those other people hopefully won't die. So that connection is very, very strong. And then we live inside a very separated and segregated community. Like we live inside of the walls of a military base. We have our own, family support groups. Everything we do is very insulated, but it ideally is almost, I want to say, the perfect, like almost leave it to beaver life that you could kind of have, because you have very supportive neighbors. You have other families that know exactly what your family is dealing with and do a really good job at being there and supporting one another. So while some people may not agree with the military as an idea, I'd say the execution that we have in community could definitely lend a lesson, at least in today's times, as to what we could achieve and how good it can be for people.
Now, one of the things you were talking about there before were the suicides. And I think here in the United States, the average is still somewhere around, 22 a day?
So the figure 22 a day came from reported studies. So that's not also tracking that some states don't report a veteran's status when in fact they do commit suicide. So state to state, they don't exactly report on that specifically. So that's the best numbers that they had to achieve that 22 a day number that they had. But I try and not focus on that as much. But yeah, and to get back to answering a question that I didn't answer, the name came from when I was more focused on the veteran suicide issue. And it's not to differentiate us from everybody else saying that we're better than people. It's saying that the people that we lose in our community to suicide, they had the potential to be the very best of all of us, but we'll never know that now.
Yeah, just going back to the suicide thing, because again, I brought up the 22 mainly because that's the statistic that's kind of put out there related to American service. Is this similar? I mean, do you know about what kind of goes on overseas with other nations with regard to the type of mental health issues and suicides and things like that take place from their forces?
So I can't speak from a position of authority. I would say I can only go off of my experience and interactions with people from other countries and how it goes for them. But in the US, we're very fortunate to at least have an underlying basis of support for our military veterans. In other countries, that's not necessarily the case. And that's just due to cultural shifts in their society and how they view violence and how they view the necessity of needing a military, and whether or not they agree with whatever the current war is, etc. But I will say that we in the US very much enjoy much more support than some of the people in some of our allied countries, and some of the people in the channel have said as much.
Because the Best of Us community is comprised of veterans from all around the world, right? Yes.
Yes, we don't necessarily discriminate. Although I would say that we might have to put certain barriers in place, for non-state actors who would want to join, like ISIS. We do have our standards, at least as our as our culture goes.
Now, as far as the relationship, I was alluding to it before, the relationship with Broadcast for Reps. How have you guys worked with them over the years?
So in the past, I worked pretty closely with Coffee Rocks. Met him out at Vegas, and he was in the Coast Guard. I'm not laughing at the fact that he was in the Coast Guard. Please don't be butthurt if you're a Coast Guard person. But we worked pretty closely hand in hand. He would send people our way, and I tried to support whatever they were doing, because it's not just something that's an issue for our community. It's an issue for all Western culture, all culture, period, with the way that we deal with mental health. And there's not enough emphasis or support sometimes put on it. And like Maribel was saying, he needed to take a break just because of the amount of energy that he put into it. And that's something everybody should know, that the people who do this kind of support stuff, like it can be really draining on a person. It can be draining physically, it could be draining mentally. So the job that they're doing is really an important one, but it also does take its toll. And I've kind of experienced a bit of that myself. So you have to learn to develop kind of I don't want to say disconnection, because that sounds bad, but you have to learn how to temper what's real in your life and then what's going on in somebody else's life. But for a while there, we were working directly under the 501c3 of Broadcast for Reps, but I decided to take us away from that just because we have a very different culture from Broadcast for Reps, and that's not to say that their culture is bad, but it is to say that we are a different demographic of people that has our own individual culture. And the way that I deal with mental health issues inside of Best of Us isn't exactly probably the best way to deal with mental health issues for people who don't reside within that culture. I like to, well, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it there.
From Broadcast for Reps' point of view, if we get somebody that I feel is, in that culture and kind of in that mindset, I still have no issues whatsoever referring them to Best of Us or, another entity that's also doing and participating in the Broadcast for Reps movement.
Nice. We've got a couple more things coming up on the show. We're going to go around the board and talk about what's happening in NullSec. I know not everyone lives in NullSec, but I do. So that's what I want to talk about. And I also want to give us plenty of time to hear the fun, rich version of Triumvirate's stuff with XIX and friends.
Yeah, so well, we can wrap up this part here. I do,
Okay.
I do sort of want to wrap it up by making sure that everybody out there recognizes. Number one, when we call this the Memorial Day weekend edition of the show, right? Memorial Day weekend is here in the United States. Okay, that's obviously other countries around the world have remembrances for their fallen at different times of the year. This just happens to be this particular weekend, and probably why Matterall's away somewhere. But yeah, so I mean, if we can give kind of one last thing here, from both McLean and Marrowbone, just to let people know again, where they can find both of these organizations, how best to contact them, yeah, and any final words from them about what it is they're doing or who they want to reach out to. Go with Marrowbone first.
I gave you guys the link, so you're more than welcome to share that, which will put people right inside of our server. Like, you don't need any kind of roles or anything like that, and you can literally join that under any name that you want to. It can be completely anonymous as well. And I just want to remind people that we are there if you're having more serious issues, and we're also there if you're just having a bad day in Eve and just literally need to vent to somebody else. Our doors are always open, and I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing thus far, and we're kind of trying to move forward and get a little bit more integrated with the community now and get a new website and all of that launched. And when we do that, I will be sure to update you guys as well so that you can share that links with your viewers and with your listeners too.
A new website makes a big difference. I want to say thank you to Kiskora for the talkingandstations.com website, and we will put your links up there on our site, both for Best of Us and Broadcast for Reps.
McLean, what is the best way to for folks out there to get in touch with you and the org?
Okay, so our in-game channel is best space of space us. Probably the better way to get connected with the rest of everybody else would be through our Discord server, which they should be linking in the chat. We have one of those cool little vanity things. It's super easy. It's Best of Us, all one word. If you want to get in touch with me specifically because you need to talk to somebody about something specific pertaining to Best of Us, or you're a veteran, you can find me on Twitter is @bestofus as well. And just give me a poke on there or in the Discord servers if there's ever something that somebody needs from me about that.
Great. I do want to make one other thing here about the fact of while it's great what both of these organizations are doing for their particular demographics or sort of the people most likely to be helped by them. I think broader to this is what I'll call the general Eve community. Somebody made reference earlier, and I'm not sure if it was on the show or before the show, about the fact of just being in a particular social group, social setting within Eve has helped a lot of people. When you look at some of the other things out there, I know within the Imperium, a number of the social SIGs that are there work as sort of bases for people to be able to connect more with others and things like that. And I know that happens around the game in various different ways. So while these are kind of very specific to some kind of deeper and potentially darker darker places at times, I think that the Eve community as a whole has these patches of kind of social connections out there that can be very positive. I mean, as much toxicity as people want to talk about related to the internet and things like that, you can actually find a lot of really positive social connections as well.
And go to an Eve meet if you're a nerd and you haven't gone to an Eve meet and there's one near you. Just bite the bullet and go out and go meet some other space nerds. It'll do you some good.
Yeah, I also would highly recommend that. Like, I've done it. It's great fun, and it's been really helpful.
And you can drink there as well.
And you can drink.
Yep.
This is true.
And you can make all kinds of funny jokes regarding Eve and normal people just won't get it, but you instantly connect with all of the other EVE players.
If you've never been to an EVE meetup with other players, whatever you're picturing, it's better than that. It's really good.
Yeah, it actually is.
All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Now, for a little bit of context, let's go along around the map just briefly and talk about what's going on in Nullsec. And that will set us up for Garst Tyrell to come in and talk a little bit about Triumvirate. I was usually, when I approach this, I think, oh, let's start at the north and make our way around clockwise. But I want to do it backwards this time. We'll start in the east. We'll go counterclockwise because I want to kind of end up in a certain place. So in the east, for example, you see some activity from Snuff against Brothers of Tangra and Horde. It's just a little harassment of some sort, but there's some going on out there. If you take a look at Ethereum Reach, the Dotland map looks like a bowl of children's cereal. It is actually, it looks like a bad neighborhood going through transition, maybe gentrifying, hopefully. But you'll see some activity going on out there of the Sov variety. In the north,
I mean, it still continues to be a very big station grab out there, right? I mean, is that basically complete at this point? Have they
hell no,
pretty much wrapped that up, or
hell no? And of course, that on the day that the conversion happens and people start unanchoring, it's still not anywhere near complete. Do you have any idea?
And you're referring to the east here separately from the northeast, I guess. So
yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at Ethereum Reach at the moment, looking at this and going, it's going to be fun to pick up any of that stuff and move it. But I'm not saying, maybe someone has a plan. Okay. And then in the northeast, if you go a little bit north of that, you've got Skill Yourself and Volta and Hard Knocks folks who are cleaning up the area where you see DRF and DCU and them moving out of. There are some signs that some of them are moving out of the area and heading southward, but right now it looks, the main activity seems to be clean up in that area. Takes a little time to get it ready. If you're jaded and bitter, you might think they're getting it ready for rental space, but we're not saying that. We're not that jaded and bitter yet.
When did this name Holy Empire?
I didn't say that name.
Or whatever.
I have not heard that before.
4 weeks ago.
The first time I saw it was today, and I'm like, whoa, when did this name come up?
Yeah, I don't know either. I bet
it was first mentioned
the space
in a Reddit post. It was
Reddit.
mentioned in a Reddit post, and I think one of the Skill Yourself people made it up. He was always writing very funny reports about what's happening in the East.
He should check that with His Excellency.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
All right, in the north, one of the Goonswarm SIGs moved out of Pureblind and moved up to Venal. It was getting too crowded in Pureblind. I can understand. Got to spread the love around a little bit. But then Guardians of the Galaxy immediately announced a redeployment too and moved up to sort of counter. Full disclosure, I have one pilot in that group up there too with them, so I've seen what's going on. And I was involved
with Guardians of the Galaxy or with the Imperium SIG that's up there.
We'll just go with a yes, and then we'll. I was present for the bad move up last weekend, where unfortunately Sword Dragon had characters on both sides of a gate and was watching the action on the other side of the gate and took his eyes off his character on the other side. Well, dude, that was your main Sword Dragon in an Avatar class Titan. You got to keep your eye on that in space. Anyway, so that was sad. I I was number 2 DPS on that kill, so sorry, Sort. You would have shot me if it were my Titan. And then, but that was a lot of fun. So there's stuff going on in the north. If we float down a little bit more, you'll see that there's some jiggling happening in what used to be years ago the heart of the CFC and the Imperium before the Casino War. So the Declan area, Fade Branch, all that stuff. There's the place is getting a lot of action. The latest is that Moa is going to drop from Guardians of the Galaxy, collapse down. Things haven't gone well for them this weekend. And they're going to give up their space. The space, apparently, we learned this from a recording of a Chaos Theory soda that got passed, or a meeting of some sort that got posted on Reddit. But we learned that Moa is giving up their space. The space in Declan's going to get sort of divided between Slice and Chaos. And in the space in Fade, we're hearing that all of Fade except DO6 is apparently being ceded to Circle of Two. Well, Circle of Two, who kind of came back to life after the Grand Betrayal and set up on the eastern side of Veil of the Silent, is now apparently going to either move or expand. It's not quite clear. Does anyone in the group happen to know what they're doing? Okay. So the CO2 folks are apparently, we got to get one of them to come on the show next week.
Yeah, there were some offers out, I think, to try and squeeze that in, because obviously we've got late breaking news in terms of what's going on with CO2, in terms of what's going on with Moa, which appears to be basically a disintegration at this point. Which is kind of sad, because back when I was up in Declan with TNT, from a TNT perspective, they were people that would screw with us, we'd screw with them. That they were sort of that little group over there in Pureblind that was always out trying to do something, right? And they grew and expanded and became something different. And now, because what looks to be some leadership that has due to real life issues gone away, right? It's sort of falling apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the attempt was made to try and get somebody on, or we just didn't have enough time to put it all together. But I would say probably by next week we'll have a little more in-depth view into what's going on there and with CO2.
So keep your eye on this section of the map for this coming week, because you can expect to see some. Well, I don't know that Solve will change hands that fast, but you'll expect to see some stuff going on in that area. My guts say that a bunch of MOA folks will simply end up joining Circle of Two and staying in Fade, but we'll see. If you go a little bit farther counterclockwise from there, you come to Cloud Ring. It's if you haven't looked at Cloud Ring for a couple months, you might think that there's still some pandemic horde activity down there, but it's not. It's now basically some faction warfare groups, a presence by the Initiative, and a little bit of caps, a little bit of activity happening there. Occasionally you see folks being sent in to harass them, like a Black Legion fleet. Anyone want to talk about that part? And then below that, you got Fountain. There was a little activity when we had Mercenary Coalition briefly in there stirring stuff up, and apparently someone had hired them to go in and cause a couple problems, but it didn't last very long. We cleared out a couple of their structures that they had dropped to stage from, and that sort of ended up timing with a shift on their part over to the Aquarius Theater. So they seem to be moving over to that side now. So no big deal. Delve is Delve. If you've never been to Delve and you read one of the monthly economic reports, I challenge you to get into a hyperspatial fast fit interceptor and just burn through some time and look at it, because Delve is crazy. It's like the Las Vegas of New Eden. There's no place else like it in the galaxy.
Or bring 100 friends and kill a super. It's also fun.
Then after
It's basically like HiSec at this point.
it's
It's HiSec with no rules.
Nobody's
I mean,
talking.
in terms of flying, let's put it this way: if you're some guy out there in an interceptor that's just decided to burn through and whatnot, right? You're going to see a lot of neutrals to you or whatever, probably, right? I mean, because just like going through HiSec.
I could see that. And then you come out on the other side of Delve. You got Aquarius, where there's some activity happening. There's layers of stuff going on. Got a little bit of involvement from NC Dot, who stage nearby in LOSEC, and they're sending fleets in, and they'll vary it up sometimes. The other day this weekend they dropped Roques on us, Roque class battleships, and then it escalated just a little bit, and they pulled back, and they paused for a few minutes, and then dropped them again. It was cool. Good thing we were still paying attention and had eyes in the system, in their form up system, because they're they.
How big are their fleets?
Oh, it varies a little bit. I think that Rogue fleet was about 80-ish, but I've seen bigger. I've seen 120 sometimes drop on something. Depends, and I've seen them send out, just all Black Ops or a bunch of Falcons to mess with someone with ECM, or I've seen them do, various other, type things. They've got a lot of tricks in their bag there. Or capitals. They'll drop capitals. And then what's going around the map here still? Let's go, if we go, Providence. We should talk about Providence for a moment. Pandemic Legion had come in and taken everything. Test Alliance had deployed there and taken some of it back. Providence is going to be a setting of some activity for the next week or two while the station conversion thing goes on. There was a recent battle report. I don't know, did you want to stick that in the channel for them? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that station conversion is coming up June 5th. So I mean, there's not much time left before that happens.
No. And then in the southeast, you got Triumvirate and Friends, who are continuing to. I don't really want to speak for Garth since we've got him here, but you see XIX and their folks are in sort of full retreat and regroup mode. There are some rumors about them crashing on Legacy Coalition's couch. I think those came from Carr, maybe. And then there was a super cap move that was, I don't know, poorly planned, and just maybe not well planned, and then maybe the participants didn't prepare for it very well. I'd like to turn this part of the show now over to Garth Tyrell and give us a little context about what's going on. Assume not everyone follows everything well and knows all the players, and jump in, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for getting the chance to come on the show and talk about what's been going on in the East. For those of you who haven't been following, last year we entered a war against FCON, Phoenix Federation, which was basically the tinderbox for starting a whole war in the East that dragged in a lot of different coalitions, even as far as the North UTG, Legacy, things like that, Horde. And so that kind of apexed last year with the fall of Phoenix Federation, Amencia Tenerifis, and then followed right afterwards by the fall of Innsmother and Try's departure from there for a few months till he came back about early April, we started to come back. That's culminated now as of this week with the full departure and defeat of XX in Innsmother, destruction of their Keep Star, and basically the massacre of their move up last weekend, which was unfortunately why we couldn't come on the show last weekend, because we were busy seeing that. So actually, I have some very exciting artwork I just made for you while waiting to talk. It's going to be debuted here on Talking Stations. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that link. If someone can throw that in Twitch chat for you. It's basically my update on the East via Paint.
Via Paint. Paint images are always the
Thank God
the
for
best.
Paint.
There you go. So if you can just go ahead and throw that image or link in there, people can have an idea of what I'm talking about while we do this.
But yeah, so you know, and just to kick it back there a little bit, you know, obviously the Tri-Keep Star went down. Was that April?
Yes. So our Keep Star died, I believe it was February, March timeframe. I was deployed in Afghanistan at the time, so I wasn't there for that, unfortunately. But I know about, I don't know, 4,000 odd people showed up to shoot it. So we tried a pretty valiant defense, but you just can't stop 4,000 people. So at the end of the day, Keep Star died. We moved on. We're back. But what was really interesting this week was basically the events that kind of led up to that, you know, that rush, that botched move up of XX from Innsmother that kind of led to that Super Cat massacre down there. So basically, up until last week, when they actually announced their evac and tried to flee, DRF had really been kind of on the fence. They've been slowly losing. We've been continuing to kill their Fortizars, kill their Solve with our help from our friends, Lumpy, Skill Yourself, Fraternity, etc. Well, not Fraternity at that point, excuse me. Red Alliance, etc. We've been making slow but steady progress. Really, the time zone tank, the fact that Citadels all come out at the same time at the same day is really limiting as an offensive entity. But basically, they were telling their members, hey, look, you know, Test is going to come help us. Test is going to come save us. So when Test didn't come help them, didn't come save them, and went off to Pravi to go after the easy win and try and get some stations over there, I think that was kind of the first real nail in the coffin where they realized, like, hey, man, no one else is going to finally bail us out of this. And then they tried, you know, the oldest trick in Eve, swap your soft timers to AE time zone when you're losing a war. No, you can't defend, but maybe they won't be able to attack either. Unfortunately for them, they did that literally the same day that Fraternity finally broke and ended their NIP with these groups. And as you probably know, Fraternity is mostly Chinese players, so the largest AU time zone nullsec block in the game right now. So it just became a steamroll overnight, where they were losing now in 3 time zones instead of 2. And they just basically packed it in. I think pretty much the same day, we just had Titans running around reinforcing whatever we wanted, because they didn't even make an effort to undock a single Dictor and try and stop that. They basically, at that point, it was very obvious that they'd given up and they were ready to leave. And to me, that's an amazing turnaround. I would have never expected that 3 months ago. I never really would have expected that 6 months or a year ago, to see the developments that have gone on in Eve in the East since then. A lot of things have happened, a lot of cool stuff that we've been involved in a try, a lot of cool stuff our friends have been involved in as well. And kind of the result was the move off as the finishing piece for this year-long war we've been involved in the East. So basically, after they retreated back to their Keep Star in 88A, we went ahead and put that into final reinforce. So they consolidated everything they owned in that one Keep Star, which gave them basically a 4-day deadline to evacuate. Otherwise, they would have lost everything. Well, unfortunately for them, we've been busy killing every Fortizar and Citadel worth a damn on their evac route towards the south, towards Curse, towards Legacy Space prior to that. And for some reason, I don't know if they just expected it not to survive if they tried it, but they didn't drop any Fortizars. They didn't drop any Citadels, as far as I can tell, the entire last 2 months of this war, which is an interesting insight into their leadership's mindset as well. Well, at the end of the day, we knew they were going to move up. We didn't know the exact system, but based on the ranges and the fact that Test had a Fortizar in C006, which is what they've been using consistently to midpoint around to us, we had a pretty good guess they would go off that direction. Test formed up a fleet. You know, at this point, it's one of those things where they had everything to Keep Star. Nothing was undocked yet. We don't really know what they're going to bring. And so we have to form up everything we can. We actually kept our dreads and carriers and alts and stuff like that out of local, specifically to keep our local numbers down, to make sure, because at that point, I was actually legitimately scared they were going to see our numbers and stand down and just give up and try again another day, when we were less postured to help them. So we were trying to do our best to just not spook them too bad, so they would actually go ahead and make the move up. And so when they finally undocked and our scouts reported 120 super carriers had just undocked, I kind of laughed a little bit and asked for a desking. So, we never seen more than 40 the entire time, and lo and behold, they had 120 super carriers alone. Because I guess that's where all the ratting super carriers finally made it back into the main group. But I was pretty confident in our setup. I was very confident with our FCs and our allies and what we were going to do, and so I decided to take the fight anyway. It was a little bit of a scramble to figure out what route they were going to do. Test, honestly, one of the biggest factors of why we went in was that Test completely half-assed it. They flubbed it. They brought a Munin fleet over. Honestly, I think it's kind of a fuck you to them as allies that you can't even bring a cap fleet or a battleship fleet over, but they brought Munins. They killed the Sinojammer in C006. And so at that point, we were thinking that they were probably going to jump their carriers. Basically, we set up to fight them in C006, as they were likely going to jump their super carriers to the gate, jump through the gate, and then align for the Forzar. And we were set up to tackle them inside C006 and fight them on the gate, drop our Titans at range, all that kind of stuff. Well, Russians being Russians, signed their entire super cap fleet to a ping in CTAC LT and just sat there for 10 minutes doing nothing, not aligning, not moving, not jumping anything else. And at that point, we're trying to scramble, trying to figure out like what the hell is going on right now. This doesn't make any sense as an FC, as an experienced block. So eventually we decided, hey, look, it's a risk. I'm pretty confident we have. We know what Test has out. They got a few hundred people out. We know what their capital numbers are. We know they flubbed it, bringing a Munin fleet instead of a real fleet. And so I made the call. We jumped in. We jumped in at 100K, brought all of our carriers in and stuff like that. Luckily avoided any crazy boson whelps from them right at the start, and we started the fight. Test went ahead and dropped about 100 dreads they had formed on top of us at 0. Unfortunately, Fraternity lost an Erebus there, our only super cap casualty of the fight, as they focused on the smaller fleets, which had less apostles and triage to support them, unlike the tri-fleet. XX started to jump in their Titans, Doomsday or triage. Only lost a few there. Actually wasn't too bad. I was expecting to lose a lot more. And at that point, we had Lumpy, which had a small super cap fleet there as well. RMC was with us, and Fraternity and ourselves basically sitting at pings 100 came off from each other, just brawling it out with Titans, long-range Titans, Dreads, etc. We had about, between ourselves and eventually Dread Bombs from NC. PL and Snuff that wanted to help out, and a Great Wildlands Coalition, and our own Dreads, about 400 Dreads on standby. After that first Airbus died, there was a little bit of pressure saying like, hey man, we got to get some Dreads in, get them off our carriers at 0 to stop our Titans from dying, basically. So we jumped in Great Wildlands Coalition. They had about 40 Dreads. Between our supers and those 40 Dreads, we were able to kill all 100 of those Dreads on top of our super cap, our entire combined fleet, without any more super cap casualties. So that was great. That was a little bit of a risk. It would have been a slam dunk to drop all of our Dreads on us to defend us, but then we wouldn't be able to do what we did next, which was we dropped PL, NC. And eventually Snuff, as well as about 100 Tri-Dreads at 0 on the enemy super cap fleet. And that's where our Dread SCs made the call to start burning down the Shield Titans and Shield Hells and things like that, because they hadn't properly brought enough facts for them, because their doctrine was armor. And so, of course, it was a no-brainer to go ahead and try and kill off those ships. As you can imagine, a lot of those Hells were ratting fits. They weren't very tanky anyway. They died very quickly. And after we went through those, we started to continue bashing on the Armored Titans and Armored Supers. And as they were dying, it was obvious that they did not have enough facts to basically support themselves to survive that 300-man Dread Bomb at that point. As you can imagine, that's quite a bit. So while that's been going on, Test had been on the field. They had their Munin fleet basically fragging as many victors as they could get. They had their carrier fleet supporting the enemy carrier fleet at 0, sharing, repping. They had Minicalis. They were trying to rep up those Shield Supers from XX, but it just wasn't enough. You just can't survive the alpha of 300 Dreads at 0. It's just not going to happen with the amount of facts they had. So Tess was rage pinging like crazy, trying to get more supers logged in, trying to get a backup fleet, more subcasts, basically just everyone and their brother trying to kind of show up. And they eventually went to Oh Shit system in Curse and had their super cap fleet there ready to on standby, ready to jump in. About that time, Skill Yourself rage burning their super cap fleet all the way over from the drone lands. They made it in, jumped in next to us, so their Titans were helping us out as well. And that's basically where we peaked at our side strength between try and friends and skill yourself super cap fleets with support from NC.PL and Snuff and Great Wildlands Coalition's dread bombs as well. So XX was just dying left and right at that point. There was a lot of cares in the field. Fortunately, there was some miscommunications from DRF and Tesla at the start. They sent over normal fighters, about half normal fighters, half Grams to our fleet at the very start. And so we were able to use all of our Grams to win the fighter war right off the bat. That was a big mistake on their part. So we basically had fighter superiority for the rest of the fight that was basically unchallenged after that. Killing 5.0s, killing fighters, things like that. Basically, at that point, DRF was just trying to extract. So that's where those test units actually did help a little bit, was they were just killing our dictors, unfortunately. So we were able to use the bubble launchers on our super carriers to go ahead and shoot bubbles onto them and keep as many tackle as we can. We're talking about 150 plus super caps. So when they starbursted out, there's only so many you can keep tackled. And so I think the final total is about 25, 30 super carriers, 10 Titans killed, which is pretty damn good. And we're pretty happy with that. But honestly, about 100 got away because frankly, it was just too hard to keep them tackled with how many dictors were dying. The lag, as you can imagine, the lag in tie-dye was terrible. We couldn't reinforce the system because we didn't know which system the fight was going to take place in. And fighters just kind of intuitively, lagged the node out a lot. Affecting all sides, of course, not just us. But at the end of the day, I'm actually really surprised how well our dreads did in terms of how many of them came back out alive. Troy had about a 50% casualty rate with that. But I think PL and NC and definitely Snuff made out pretty well, killing a lot of dreads and not losing too many of their own as well. So I think that's kind of the fight in a nutshell. Had Test brought a super cap fleet from the start, we probably wouldn't have gone in at all, to be quite frank, just because it took so long to get some of our backup forces there. We just outnumbered too much. So it was a gamble, but it was a calculated gamble because we knew, based on what we saw as the enemy having on the field and the fact that XX was set up for a move op. So all these caps we killed was actually way more devastating than normal because they basically had all their life possessions and ships inside their carriers, inside their dreads, inside their facts. So to the individual players, they didn't just lose a cap, they lost basically all their subcaps as well.
It was a wagon train.
Exactly. So it was still set up for PvP. But one thing I noticed is they jumped in about 40 apostles to start from XX, but they didn't ever jump in any replacements. I mean, that was all the facts they had. So once we got those facts done and they were no longer able to tank reps with the remaining facts, it was over with. I mean, it was just mopping up at that point and seeing how many we could kill before they inevitably kind of got away. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it.
Dude, are you a DoD press briefing officer? Because that right there was that may have been the single longest that anybody has ever talked on Talking in Stations from beginning to end with an after action report like that.
And it was really good.
It was like he was reading it, but it didn't sound like he was reading it.
No, I appreciate that. I never prepare anything. I just kind of shoot from the hips. I mean, I had the virtue of being there as one of the main SCs, so I was able to see it firsthand. I don't have any cool paint diagrams of how the escalations went, things like that. I'm sure I'm missing a few of the key details, but at the end of the day, we had a lot of fun. I don't think XX probably had too much fun, but hopefully everybody else did. And we're looking forward to more big battles like that in the future.
If you're going
to Captain Patrick Archer, sorry about that, Cornelius, but I just want to hit this real quick. Captain Patrick Archer said out in the Twitch channel, Captain Patrick Archer, was he a tried did he leave Tri a while back? Or, anyways, he says PGL wrote in his update that he was pretty underwhelmed by our poor execution.
Well, he was referring to our execution, not Test execution. I'd say it's very easy to criticize other people when you're too cowardly to jump in your caps and support your allies. So you can easily criticize from afar, but I guess we'll never know because he cowered it out and didn't jump in.
How much was it in dollars worth, the whole battle?
How much was the what worth?
Dollar, like the dollar amount. That's what people are asking a lot of times.
Oh, I don't know. We hit 3 trill with ISK kills. I want to know how much that is in dollars.
Yeah, so 4.3 trillion ISK worth. Yeah.
Somebody calculate that in the Twitch chat, please. I'm curious.
Now if you're going to give advice to a budding young super cap op about to do a move up for his alliance or coalition, what takeaways would you give this person? For example, have everyone in a PvP fit, for example?
So for the most part, they were PvP fits. I didn't look at all the Kimmels. There's too many to look at, honestly. So I assume that most of them were PvP fit. Really, the answer I would give is don't be lazy. Assume a worst case scenario. You have everything to lose and nothing to gain by half-assing it, being lazy. They didn't attempt to drop any citadels. I mean, Test probably could have dropped a citadel for them. Again, they didn't think about it. They didn't do it. An even better example was when XIX fled Amencia after we defeated PFED November of last year. They were actually using posses to try and escape through Great Wildlands to go back up to Geminate, and Patrick and Tri just dumpstered them. And it's like, why are you doing this? There's citadels in the game for a reason. Use the game mechanics to your advantage. I think there's maybe laziness or complacency. I don't know, but we took a pretty hard toll on them before as well last year.
What about their much discussed ratio of super caps to faxes?
So again, the 120 super carriers was the most we'd ever seen from them. I didn't believe it was real until I saw the D-scan for myself, because it was so crazy outside of what we saw from them previously. Previously, it was about 40 super carriers, 5 to 10 Titans, which is pretty awful for a coalition their size, how long they've been in the region, how long they've been care bearing. So that's kind of on them. But fax basically was really true with like coalition super cap fights. Titan numbers and fax are the bottlenecks. It's who has more Titans, who has more fax, and everything else kind of takes a secondary seat to that. And frankly, XX didn't have many Titans, and they didn't have many fax either, and it bit them in the ass.
Yeah.
It's been a major reversal of fortune out there. I mean, I remember back when the Tri Keep Star was burning, and all those questions of is Tri done, right? Which is what you always get like towards the end of the culmination of somebody being removed from a place or a major asset going down or something like that. But this is a very big reversal of fortune. I mean, like you said, if you go back 6 months or certainly a year ago, right, to look at the landscape of the drone regions and the East in general, I'm not sure anybody could have foreseen that. Certainly 6 months ago, even.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would have been right there with you. I mean, so there's a misconception I want to clear up with the start of this war a year ago was when Tri basically said from the start, I think we said it on the Meta show, we actually announced it, we said, hey, we're doing a peaceful reset of drone regions, we're leaving, we're giving back the Spire and Ethereum Reach, which we did, took down all our POS citadels, gave back 2 regions worth of softs to DRF, and then at that point, it wasn't exactly clear to us at that point, but basically stretching from Paragon Sol up to Cobalt Edge and Venal, there were backdoor deals and NIPs and agreements and things like that, basically designed to contain Tri, which was a 1,500-man alliance, which is multiple coalitions. It's pretty absurd when you think about it that way, but that's actually how it turned out. So when we went to war with Phoenix Federation, kind of break out of that containment, which was meant to strangle us, Test decided all of a sudden that we were their forever enemies. XX jumped into White Knight, FCON, Solar unblued us when it was convenient for them, jumped in on what they assumed would be the winning side. So, I mean, again, they underestimated us. We took a gamble. Our strategic gamble was that we could kill FCON and PFED and break that off from that big coalition over there before we'd lose our own SOV. I was actually very happy to see how that turned out. We kept the offensive on the entire time in Imensi and Tenerifis until FCON died. And then Test basically gave up on them and left. XX gave up on them and left. And then it really wasn't until after that strategic battlefield had moved on that XX finally made a way overdue play for Innsmother, which basically it wasn't the easy one they're looking for with such a grinder, and it was not helping them because, again, they have severe time zone limitations of their own. So we had our stuff timed for U.S. time zone that they continuously called in other coalitions ranging from Horde to Guardians of the Galaxy to Legacy to come basically just blob us out on timers. And it got to the point where they weren't making significant progress, that they actually, and this is what I think is really underappreciated as well, is that XX left the drone regions. They gave away Geminate to Pandemic Horde. That's not something you do casually. That's something that takes a lot of deliberate thought. And it was basically the only move that they could do to evict us from Innsmother was to physically live there with us. Otherwise, it was a war that was never going to end, and their guys were going to burn out, as ultimately happened.
Do you really think they did that because they wanted to evict you from Innsmother? Do you think that was their motivation?
So that would not be a move that they could make unless Try was no longer in Innsmother. The fact that they still held and intended to hold their entire Drone Region's rental empire as after Try left Innsmother, they went back up to go fight Skill Yourself and lost. So that was still in their plan. And if you're going to hold that area, you can't really hold it from Innsmother. You have to have agreements in place. You have to have stagings in place. So yeah, I do think that. I think they would have never even put that on the table, because who gives away the home region they've had for years unless there's an extreme situation where you have to do that? They didn't go
I'm
Sawless,
sure
they
there
didn't
was an
become
extreme
pirates.
situation. I just think it was a different one. But
Possible.
keep going.
I'm not saying it was an event in isolation, but I think it's definitely a factor that played into it, and it was what ultimately made our decision to leave Innsmother and now come back.
Roger.
Well, anyways, as much as I could listen to Garth's voice like all day long, we are running a little bit short on time here. We do want to move on and talk to Nova about what's going on with Bombers Bar.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot more to this whole Try in the East story that's going to play out over time. So hopefully now that Garth is back and around, we can certainly have him on again.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the invite.
We didn't even get to address what he sees, what he can imagine happening coming up next. That would be fun too. But let's go to Bombers Bar next.
Would be interesting as well.
Yeah.
Do you have, Garth, do you have any concrete plans who you're gonna attack next? Or do you not want to talk about it publicly?
I would expect that in the next 30 days, probably the summer, Test will use XX's withdrawal to their space as a casus belli to attack Innsmother and make some Herfblur narrative about that. So at this point right now, we're just consolidating our Sov, rebuilding some ISK, getting some more Titans, things like that. But let's say all indications point to that very soon. So each should be heating up again over the summer.
Nice.
It'd be fun.
So you're gonna keep making ballsy decisions on choosing your enemies?
Well, sometimes our enemies get to choose us, and since Legacy decided to forget that we helped them move into the South by fighting Stainwagon, that we're now forever enemies with them, I think they want a piece of us, so we'll see if they do it.
It's always great if big nullsec alliances are starting wars, because in Bombers Bar we need wars to have fun entertainment. It's for our whaling. It's great when in the background they're like test. I think we even killed like a test super when you guys were having the fight because they were sort of busy somewhere else, and that they actually thanked us for killing it because he was not supposed to be raiding. He was being told not
Let's
to
back
go
up
out and
for a
raid.
second, Nova. Let's start by explaining to people who've never heard of Bombers Bar who it is and what you guys do, etc.
So Bombers Bar is an in-game channel with the same name, and anyone can join. It's NPSI, not Purple Shooted. That means doesn't matter what corp or alliance you belong to, you can join there and join those fleets and have great kills.
Is there an actual bar? Can you get a glass of champagne if you need one?
Well, actually, usually on some kind of fleets, people bring a lot of alcohol to the computer and then we drink together. And
So
there's
it's a
also
virtual bar.
Bombers Bar. There's also a Bombers Bar in Canada, but I contacted them. They didn't want to have a partnership.
Nice. Okay, so it's a chat channel in game.
Yeah.
And a virtual bar. What do you guys do?
We go out and kill raiders and we bomb fleets. That's our main business. But the bombing lately has changed a bit because, for example, the last big fight there, it was mainly supers and normal capitals, and it's sort of pointless to bomb them. There's no place for us there. Not really.
You're skipping a whole bunch of background info.
Oh.
Do you have a particular kind of people that are in the chat channel? Do you have a particular favorite ship type? Anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Bombers Bar only flies cloaky stuff, as the name implies. Anything with COVID Ops cloak can join, and all the new bros are welcome. We even have a bomber care. So when you lose your ship, you can apply for a bomber care. Then you get a certain amount of ISK back. That's our social side. We finance that with loot and donations. And what else?
And
Yeah.
how would you describe the characteristics of the people that are in the room?
You mean in Bomberspar? It's
Yeah.
from bitter vets to complete new bros. And sometimes we kill someone and then we tell them, hey, just join Bomberspar if you can't afford another super, something like that.
And they're all different corporations and alliances in EVE.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah,
Completely
that's a
different.
key point.
There's goons talking to NC Dot guys in our fleets. There is pirates. There's high-sec miners who have never PvP'd before. There's a lot of new bros that see their first capital on grid or have their first kills ever. So it's very, very mixed group, and we make it work somehow. And we're really practiced at making it a uniform fleet from the start. From forming, we make it the base rules, we make them clear, and we tell them how to survive the best we can. And we also have some training fleets sometimes to get people are a bit shy into PvPing.
In my experience in the fleets, the instructions were pretty clear. They let you know exactly what to do next.
Yeah.
You didn't have to be experts on this to go in and participate.
Yeah, the complete new bro can come as long as you have a covert ops cloak, even if you don't have the skills yet to have a good bombing fit or whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as you bring a covert ops cloak, you can join the fleet and be of help. It's in some way or another.
Now, how long have you been participating in Bomberspar?
Me, I think it's 3 or 4 years. I started out as a new bro, and then I met Templeman in Nullsec, and 3 months later was in a bomber, and a few weeks later than that, I was seeing the first fleets.
And
sorry if I missed it, but is Templeman still involved?
He's now firefighter, so now he's gonna have 3 weeks off, and I was chatting with him yesterday, so we're getting him back, but he's always quitting the game, playing Star Citizen and other stuff. But he's coming back sometimes when we tell him to.
And how has Bomberspar changed over the time that you've been in the group?
Oh, massively. It changed from in Providence, 5 bombers are bombing a jump bridge and killing some small stuff, to we have 100-man fleets and kill super carriers each fleet. It's changed tremendously. The targets also changed a lot, and the ways we do things had to adjust to certain changes CCP made, and we're always adapting and trying to get new meta going in terms of cloaky warfare. And soon we're going to try out some new stuff as well.
How do you pick your targets?
The hunters do all the work in the target picking. We roll around on wormhole fleets. We roll around the wormhole, and we try to get good regions, get behind the intel, because most alliances have those intel bots that ping, oh, hunters 5 jumps out, maybe press this button and maybe warp off. So it's really easy for them to not get caught if they pay attention. So we're trying to get behind that intel system and try to catch them when they're not looking, and try to snag a Oracle or 2 or some other capitals in Imperium space, for example. You guys know this very well. They always counter drop with supers and titans, and sometimes they just bring some carriers and stuff, and maybe we can snag 1 or 2 faxes. Like last week, there was one point we caught a Oracle, we shot it, and in the next door system, a Hell was still redding. He didn't care. So we just dropped on that Hell and killed it.
Sometimes the Hells have a lot of chutzpah. I don't know if you know this word.
Chutzpah, and that? What does that mean?
Right, never mind.
Spaceballs. They've got Spaceballs.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Actually, I think it's more just that they don't care if they lose it.
Yeah, I think they feel so safe, but when they miss that the Sino Hip is deployed, or they only have a few friends helping them, then might not be enough. I think they brought a fax in or something, but if you have 100 bombers with focused void bombs, it's gonna get rid of the fax really fast.
Yeah. How has never mind how Bomber Bar has changed over the last few years? How has your targets? How has the landscape of prey changed over the last few years?
That has changed twofold. First off, Templeman, for example, got more famous when he bombed like a 100, 200 men test battle cruiser fleet. No, not Ferox, Drakes, I think it was. And the bombing has changed in regards that big fleet fights now have much less subcapitals, and the Macarials were pretty hard to bomb before they got nerfed or changed. And
Nerfed is fair.
Now it's more capitals, and also on the Ratters that we kill, it used to be Rattlesnake kill was a great kill. Then the first people or bunch of people started to red in carriers when they still had drones, and we had like 20-man fleets, and we were killing those carriers. And now it's super carrier redding and Rorquals, and sometimes we still catch carriers, but it's less.
Excellent. And what time zones and what days of the week and stuff do you guys take fleets out?
Oh, it highly depends on who's FCing. So mostly it's EU time zone at the moment, 1800 around that time, and some US time zone stuff. And sometimes we just run the EU time zone fleets so long that we just keep them open, keep people coming, letting them come back in, and maybe get a nice late night US kill. But it's mainly when the most people are logged in, then the most targets are there. So it's most convenient for us to hunt in those time zones.
Now you've got a mixed group of people in your fleet, and you're going around picking almost random targets, and whatever looks juicy that you manage to catch.
Yeah, completely.
What do you do in the situation where someone in the fleet is blue to the prey that the hunters have picked? What is your advice to your players, and what do you do?
We usually say that on each fleet they don't have to shoot. They could just cloak up and warp off on that particular target and wait for the next WEML to be rolled, wait for the next target. They can shoot them if they want to, but it's their decision if they want to get into diplomatic troubles or whatever. But they're completely fine to just not shoot. I mean, some people maybe put a target painter on something that is really juicy sometimes, and they might get in trouble for that.
I mean, I was going to ask a question that was sort of along those lines. I'm glad Carneros opened it up. But what about from an OPSEC standpoint? That here you have a mixed group of people that are rolling around out there, and all of a sudden you come upon a target that is let's say I don't know, a Pandemic Legion Ratter or a Northern Coalition Ratter or Imperium or whatever. Does OPSEC come into play where now you have people within the fleet that tend to alert a potential victim?
Sometimes they do that, but they also kind of want to have the fleet to have fun. Sometimes they try, but Bombers Bar has been around for a very long time, so we have friends in all alliances and everywhere. So if we ever get told, hey, this guy is continuously like leaking intel from the fleet, then we might talk to that guy or not let him fly with us anymore. But mostly it doesn't matter, because the fleet members don't know what the hunters are seeing and what the hunters are talking about. It's a separate comms, sort of. We have channel commander for that. And it doesn't matter too much. They can't leak too much information because they don't have too much information. Same with bombing. On bombing fleets, they usually don't know where they're going to go. And they're just when they're in the system, they know which system it's going to be in. We use wormhole chains, and it's very OPSEC. And also one thing about bombing, we have on our Bombers Bar homepage, I don't know if you could link it in the channel, we have on bomberspar.org, we have the intel for bombing fleets, and some of the Tri guys sometimes did it. I don't know if you know that, Gars, but on that Keepstar defense, someone on the Tri side of the fight was informing us. So we were not bombing you guys first, we were actually sparing you guys until we bombed everyone else. And that's how it goes. the people who give us information get either bombed last, or they can pick a side that we should bomb first. So they can choose either or. And well, if you don't give us intel at all, and we just get there on our own or get the information on our own, we're gonna bomb whatever looks the juiciest to bomb. And yeah, if you give us the intel, you can do it anonymously, and only free Bomberspar FCs are going to see that intel. So it's really safe. We really keep our sources safe. If you want to give us your name or something, but you don't have to. You can just type the information in there and tell us who to bomb first, and we're completely going to honor that. A lot of people have done it before, but not everyone knows that. And someone in, I think, Eve Asher, is that Asher Elias?
Asher Elias, yep.
Yeah, he was blaming us that we're so impartial, that we're always siding with GOTG, and that's completely not true. We bombed their enemies as often as we bombed them, but if we know that a particular FC in a particular group isn't really good at defending himself against bombs, well, then bombing FCs are tending to bomb them more often. It's just the nature of things. It's just what blows up the best.
When I'm not hosting a show on Twitch, I actually am the CEO of an alliance in nullsec. And when my guys ask me if they can participate in Bomberspar fleets, I tell them sure, but look at everything before you bomb it. So whatever target they picked, if it's blue, just keep your bombs for the next one.
Yeah.
And don't release them.
Yeah,
Don't get on any kills that are blue. If you do, I'll ask you to pay for the ship.
Yeah, but I think you're also going to be forgiving if your side, for example, is bubbling the enemy, and then we bomb the enemy to pieces, like the entire fleet, and your 2 Dictor pilots die as well just because they were tackled. That's like casualties, right? That's fine, I guess.
Well, the survival rate of interdictors is generally really low.
Yeah, that's just what do you call that in the military term? Casualties? No, not casualties. Friendly fire?
Friendly fire.
Yeah, expendables. It's a bit harsh. But yeah.
When I see a dead interdictor on my alliance kill boards, I don't actually click through to see what killed it or anything.
Yeah,
if they were on the Undock and Jita, maybe, because that would just be amusing in itself. But no. Okay. So is there anything you want to tell the audience about, any last thoughts or any message that you want to get out about Bomberspar? What made you want to get on the show today?
I heard from a Bomberspar fleet member on my fleet where we killed another super, that somebody from NC. From some podcast wanted to have someone from Bomberspar on. And then I wrote Matterall and he connected me with you guys.
He is technically still in NC. They have not kicked him yet.
Did you know Matterall?
Well, why should they? Yeah, I talked to him before. Yeah. And also, the banner here is a bit in the way. Well, I want to say happy birthday to Calcular, one of our FCs who has an fleet up right now in the Bomberspar channel. And happy birthday to you, Calcular, and to all of the new bros. Keep on going strong. And I'm glad that you're always joining Bomberspar fleets and expand your horizons.
All right. I want to thank everyone for coming on. I appreciate it. This has been a great, fun show. I appreciated all of you. I'd like to thank Commander A's and Gidia who subscribed, and thank you very much. I also want to thank our producers on the show, Artemis, January, and Sarah, and McLeod for all the hard work in the background, keeping it all running, getting the stream running, putting the videos up and the links and stuff, and keeping us calm in between. I appreciate that. Does anyone have any messages they want to get out before we go?
Yeah, I do want to say that today, as we speak, is the last day to sign up for the Alliance tournament by 23:59 UTC tonight, Sunday night. So if your alliance is still wanting to get in there, maybe you want to push that button. And then of course we have got the Into the Abyss expansion that is coming this Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday we have got the station changeover. So we're looking at a fairly busy time here over the course of the next 9 days or so.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. And shout out to Matterall, who's off with his family this weekend. Have a great time, guy, and we'll hold the fort down till you get back. No, we're good. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening today, and thanks to all our guests who are on tonight. And hey,
Thanks for
everybody
having me on.
everybody have a good rest of your weekend wherever you might be in the world. Happy Memorial Day to those of you in the United States.
Enjoy the day, guys.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you guys.
Bye.